Hello, I'm Bart Walsh. This series is called Care of the Self, and we're talking about resolving chronic emotional states, and we're going to focus on chronic emotions like anxiety and depression for now. Last sequence, we did an overview of what is required, and we talked about three of the common sources of chronic problem states. And one source, of course, is unresolved events or even a single event from the past that gets activated in the present. Another source is a belief that we carry, whether the belief is conscious or not. And a third source is when we're genetically predisposed to these chronic conditions. They seem to run in the family. Now there is a fourth source that involves isolated parts of us that are somehow separated from the rest of the system and carrying some very difficult experience. We'll talk a lot more about that in another sequence. For now, we're going to address history, address the event or events of the past that haven't been resolved and are triggering chronic emotional states or other states in the present. First of all, you will need to develop a signaling system with the unconscious, and we addressed this in a previous sequence. So make sure that you have yes and no finger signals so that you can question the unconscious and get yes or no responses through your fingers. Some of you may develop idiosensory experiences so that you will feel something that indicates yes and feel something else that indicates no. But make sure that you have a signaling system set up with your unconscious mind. Once you have that, then you can ask the unconscious, is there some event from the past related to the source of this chronic anxiety or chronic depression, whatever the case may be? And if you get a yes, then you've got confirmation that this event is at the source. If you get a no, you can ask, is there a series of events from the past related to the source of this chronic anxiety I'm experiencing? And if you get a yes, well, then you've got confirmation. If you get a no, then you're going to ask about some other source. But let's say that you get a yes to either the event or the series of events from the past. Either way, you're going to proceed in the same fashion. Next, ask the unconscious, will all of the emotion associated with this event or series of events from the past now be released and resolved in whatever way is truly best for me at this time? Patiently await a response because your unconscious has to review that time in history. If you get a yes, then you can suggest that can happen, and when I really am free of all that emotion, that yes finger can lift up at that time and patiently await that response. When you get that response, then you can ask the unconscious, since I'm now free of all that emotion, will this particular source of chronic anxiety now be resolved so I can be free of it? And if you get a yes, then you can ask the yes finger to lift up when you are free of that source of chronic anxiety or depression. Okay, now let's say that you get a no response to having all that emotion resolved. Then you can ask, is there something important that needs to be clearly understood by way of resolving all of that emotion associated with that event from the past? Patiently await a response, and if you get a yes, then you can ask, will that important information become very clear to me as all of this emotion is resolved. If you get a yes, then you can have the yes finger lift up when you're free of that emotion. If you get a no, you can ask, will that important information become clear to me now? And if you get a yes, then you can just await that information, and when something comes to mind, speak it out loud and ask the unconscious, is this the information I need to understand? And if you get a yes response, then you can once again ask, will all of that emotion now be resolved? And if you get a yes, have the yes finger lift up when you're free of that emotion, and then ask for the resolution of that source of chronic anxiety or depression. Okay, so this is the basic formula. You're going to ask if there's an event or series of events from the past related to the source of the chronic condition. The condition may be anxiety, depression, it could be rage, it could be jealousy, or it could be some physiological state. Either way, if you find out that the event or series of events is related, then you're going to ask that all of the emotion associated with that event or series of events be released and resolved. Once that happens, then you're going to ask that the source of the chronic condition be resolved. And it's a pretty simple process, and that's the basic formula for resolving that particular source of chronic anxiety or depression. Now, there may be other conditions, physiological conditions, chronic conditions, that you'll want to do the same thing with. So, we're next going to talk about another source of chronic anxiety, depression, or other condition, and that source is belief. So we'll be addressing that in the next sequence, and realize that you can get all of this information in the Care of the Self Owner's Manual book. And most of this information is also in another book called Emotional Regulation Using Signals of Self. Either one of those books, you'll be able to get this information. Okay, thank you for watching. See you in the next segment. Bye-bye.